after the bye in 2024, the Philadelphia Eagles were able to figure some things out, and they were able to get consistently better and better and better and better and better, culminating in a Super Bowl 59 victory. Well, the Philadelphia Eagles had the bye a month ago, and while fans were hoping that the Eagles would continue their winning streak that they were on before the bye, this seems to be getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Ultimately, leading up to the Philadelphia Eagles dropping their second game in a row, this game to the Chicago Bears by a final score of 24-15. Welcome to the Bird's Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I know I did, but I think the Philadelphia Eagles offense is still hopped up on tryptophan because they were lifeless. They were inept. They were dead over the course of this game. And while I get a lot of flack sometimes for relying very heavily on statistics and analyzing the game, and maybe sometimes rightly so, because stats don't always tell the full story and sometimes may lead a little bit towards a different view of the game than what actually was. I do like the fact that stats can sometimes help quantify what we're seeing on the field. And in this situation, the stats absolutely do tell the story. You have a Philadelphia Eagles team that put out 317 total net offensive yards over the course of this game on 51 plays. You had the Chicago Bears put out 425 total net offensive yards on 85 plays. You had a Philadelphia Eagles team that had 87 total net offensive rushing yards, which I would point out was against a team that came into this game as the 28th best run defense in the league, giving up 138.1 rushing yards per game on average coming into this game. Meanwhile, the Chicago Bears had 281 total net rushing yards over the course of this game. So the Chicago Bears had more than triple, the total number of offensive rushing yards that the Philadelphia Eagles had. The Philadelphia Eagles came in to this game and were able to amass just 14 total first downs. The Chicago Bears got 28 total first downs over the course of this game. To put that into perspective, that's double what the Philadelphia Eagles had. On third down, the Philadelphia Eagles went 4 for 12. The Chicago Bears went 10 for 17. And this is the stat that really grinds my gears right now, and that is time of possession. The Philadelphia Eagles held on to the ball for 20 minutes and 42 seconds over the course of this game. The Chicago Bears held on to the ball for 39 minutes and 18 seconds. To put that into perspective, if they had shortened the game by a quarter, so they only played 3 quarters, and they took the 15 minutes that they cut out from the Chicago Bears' time of possession, the Chicago Bears still would have held on to the football for 4 more minutes than the Philadelphia Eagles did. That should be the biggest red flag of this game, because when I see a Philadelphia Eagles team that is losing the time of possession battle, I think back to the Chip Kelly years, where Chip Kelly, by design, had the offense come on, try to score very quickly, try to keep things going at a very fast pace, and then get off the field. And that put a real strain on the defense over the course of the 3 years that Chip Kelly was at the offensive helm. So when I see the Philadelphia Eagles offense losing the time of possession battle this drastically, I can't put a lot of blame on the defense for the loss, because the offense wasn't able to stay on the field, whether by ineptitude or by design. And in this case, I think it's more ineptitude, because the Philadelphia Eagles offense hasn't felt right at all this season, and especially hasn't felt right since the bye week. And these numbers show it. And if you don't like these numbers, we can talk about the first half numbers, which are even worse. The Philadelphia Eagles had just 83 total net offensive yards in the first half on 17 plays, compared to the Chicago Bears' 222 total net offensive yards on 47 plays. The Chicago Bears held the ball for 21 minutes to the Philadelphia Eagles' 9 minutes. The Chicago Bears had 16 first downs to the Philadelphia Eagles' 2 first downs. The Chicago Bears were 7 for 10 on third downs. The Philadelphia Eagles were 1 for 5. These are all numbers from the first half. So when you're digging yourselves into that big of a hole, you can't expect the defense to come in and bail you out consistently. You can maybe expect them to do that every once in a while, maybe even twice in a row, as the Eagles defense had to do against the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. But you can expect it over the course of a month, and you definitely can expect it on a short week. And that's also evidenced in the Eagles' defensive stats. Reed Blankenship had 14 combined tackles. Nakobe Dean had 12 combined tackles and an almost interception. Jordan Davis had 9 combined tackles. Zach Baun, 8 combined tackles. We had Jalen Carter getting a sack on Caleb Williams. We had Nolan Smith getting a sack on Caleb Williams. We had, again, the interception from Jalix Hunt. We had a lot of really, really solid heads-up performances by the defense. I can't really expect a lot more from the defense than what we saw, especially given the circumstances. So I can't chalk this loss up completely to the defense. Now, is it a problem that the defense gave up 24 points? Yes, it is. But it's not the biggest problem because of the ineffective offense. If you take out the first quarter of the Dallas Cowboys game, the Philadelphia Eagles, over the course of the last 15 quarters, have scored just 5 touchdowns. That is unacceptable. And it is a sign of poor offensive production at a collective level. Saquon Barkley, 13 carries for 56 yards. And while you can make the argument, and people have made the argument, that Saquon maybe has missed a step, or that the Eagles' offensive line has been banged up, you can make those arguments, and if those were situations where the Eagles' run game, if Saquon was the only non-producer in the run game, I might be inclined to entertain some of those arguments. But he's not the only non-producer in the run game. And because the Eagles seem to be putting in an offensive play design in the run game that has Saquon Barkley running into the backs of offensive linemen because for whatever reason they can't create a hole for him, or because opposing defenses are stacking the box, that is a coaching problem. And if you take a look at the pass game, while the Eagles were technically better than the Chicago Bears in the passing game stats, they weren't all that great either there. Jalen Hurts was 19 for 34 in the passing game for 230 yards. And while, yes, he did have 2 touchdowns there, he did also have a pick. And that pick was mainly because he was flushed out of the pocket and missed throwing the ball away or throwing the ball to A.J. Brown. I don't know how you want to read it, but either way, it was a miss. And it was also a good read by Kevin Byard. So the Philadelphia Eagles... And you can't even pin this on an individual receiver because all of the receivers were probably about equally as good. You have A.J. Brown, who had an incredible day today. 10 catches on 12 targets, 132 yards. He had a touchdown that came really clutch towards the end of the game. That hope was squandered on a failed 2-point try. It was a very, very bad play call that was very emblematic of the entire game. And then you had another touchdown by A.J. Brown earlier in the game where Jake Elliott did miss an extra point on that play as well. You had Devontae Smith, who had 5 catches on 8 targets for 48 yards, including a 30-yard catch early in the game that could have been, if the Eagles were able to produce anything on offense, a little bit of a shot in the arm. You had Dallas Goedert, who had 2 catches on 4 targets for 27 yards. And we can go on and on down the line. The worst producer in the receiving game was Saquon Barkley, who had no catches on 2 targets. But the fact of the matter is that Jalen Hurts was missing players, or he was throwing behind them, or there were communication issues, or he was missing reads. You can say whatever it is, in that regard. But at the end of the day, that's still a coaching issue because you have to be helping him try to figure those reads out. And you also have to be able to keep the offensive line in a position where Jalen's not going to be forced to run for his life over the course of the game, which he had to do quite a bit. But I feel like we're talking about the same things over and over and over again. And this goes back to something that I brought up at the end of the Dallas game, and that is this idea of accountability. It's something that Nick Sirianni holds as a core value. Connection, competition, accountability, football IQ, and fundamentals are his 5. And accountability, being a core value, can't just stop at the meeting that they have on Monday when Nick goes through and calls out individual mistakes and so on and so forth down the line. It can't stop there. Why? Because if it stops there, you're not really being accountable for the mistake. Are you owning up to it? Yes, it was a mistake. Yeah, but accountability also means that you have to be growing from the mistake. You have to be learning from it. You have to be making the corrections. And you have to be working with the right people to do so. And especially when the same mistakes are being made over and over and over again. And I do believe that the Eagles want to get better from these mistakes. They want to not be making the same mistakes over and over and over again. But the fact that they are is a coaching problem. It is not a player problem at a certain point, because at a certain point, if you keep doing the same things over and over and over and over again, the players are no longer making mistakes. It's a coaching issue. And when those same mistakes are being made on one side of the football, the offensive side, it does put a lot of pressure on the defense to try to step up. And while the defense can and should be expected to do that, you also can expect them to be the sole performer over the course of the game, especially not over multiple weeks. The Philadelphia Eagles defense actually didn't do a horrifically bad job in the passing game, as I pointed out. Caleb Williams' stats in the passing game didn't look all that different, and in some areas actually looked a little bit worse than Jalen Hurts. Caleb Williams was 17 for 36 in the passing game for 154 yards. He was sacked twice. He did have a touchdown. He also had an interception off of a very heads-up play by Jalix Hunt. But the run game is where the Chicago Bears really shone offensively. And a run game is going to take a really heavy toll on a defense, especially a defense like the Philadelphia Eagles, whose offense can't seem to stay on the field long enough for them to get any kind of rest. The Chicago Bears actually had two 100-plus yard rushers. We had Kevin Monangai, who had 22 carries for 130 yards, including a 31-yard longest run. He also had a touchdown. And then you had former Eagle DeAndre Swift go 125 yards on 18 carries. He had a longest run of 23 yards, and he also had a rushing touchdown. And mad props to the Chicago Bears, because they came in with a plan to try to defeat the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Philadelphia Eagles didn't seem to have one to try to beat the Chicago Bears. So this comes down to a Philadelphia Eagles team that on one half of the football looks like a deer in the headlights, and they don't know what they're doing. And they need to figure out what they're doing quick, because the Eagles have 5 games left. They've got 2 more games against the divisional opponent in the Washington Commanders. And the Commanders, while they're not the best team this season, do have a history of playing the Philadelphia Eagles very tough. You also have games against the Buffalo Bills, the LA Chargers, and the Las Vegas Raiders. And while some of those games may be more winnable than others, there is not a lot of confidence right now among the Eagles fans that this Eagles team is going to be able to come away with victories where it counts. This was a team that once felt in the driver's seat for the NFC East. Not even a couple of weeks ago, they felt like they were in the driver's seat. But this week, the Philadelphia Eagles definitely felt like they were trying to give away control of everything. They are now down to the number 3 seed after the loss to the Chicago Bears. They lose the tiebreaker to the Chicago Bears. The Philadelphia Eagles are also only a game and a half ahead of the Dallas Cowboys, thanks to the tie that the Cowboys had. And while I don't think that we're at 2023 levels of bad yet, and there's still time to turn it around to keep us from getting there, the Eagles are not looking good. And that is very evident by the fact that when the Eagles were going into the locker room at halftime, fans were booing them. And those boos were 100% well-deserved. The Philadelphia Eagles have a lot of soul-searching to do over the course of the next 9 days before they face off against the LA Chargers. They have a lot of stuff to figure out, and they have to figure it out quickly. Because the microscope is very much on them, especially at the coaching level. Because a lot of these failures can be very much pinned on the coaching staff, especially Kevin Patullo, because it's an entire system failure. The Eagles are going to be very much tested over the course of the next 5 weeks. How they come out of that test is going to tell the story of this 2025 NFL season. And if they can't right the ship, it's going to be a very long December and a very short January. But as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. What were your thoughts about this game? What stood out to you? Were there any positives that you had about this game? What concerns do you have? Let me know. And thank you so much to everyone for tuning into the Bird's Nest Podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest Podcast by liking and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as by sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and iHeartRadio. Please visit birdsnestmedia.com for additional Eagles and NFL coverage. And if you feel so inclined to support us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go Eagles.